Hello, I'm James George, and this is Web Design Blog. And this week I'm going to talk about CSS classes. Now, if you've been working with HTML and CSS, then you know that there are some instances where you want to be able to um spread a consistent look around the rest of your site. And for example, let's say you want this text to be uh, blue, you want it to be white with a blue background behind it. Before, this didn't have that. This had the same styling as the news section down here, and with black text and a white background. And it didn't really look that good. And the problem is, um, it just sort of looks bland. And if you want a consistent look with your site and you want to add styles to a div, but you don't want to constantly be naming new divs. The trick is to use classes. And so let's hop over to Dreamweaver here and we'll look at our HTML. So you've got, I'm using Foundation. It's my favorite framework to use. And so you have your divs, which are boxes basically with your content in them. And so, like, I have a div with the class that is large 4 columns. So that means that in our grid, you have 12 columns. It spans 4. So if you have three of these in a row, it creates a column of 12. A row of 12 divided up into 3 columns of 4. And so the problem is when you're developing with this, you don't, if you were going to do, try to use the ID method, which some people still use that, and I don't know why they do this, but they have a div with an ID of blue. Well, the problem with that is every time you want to change something, you've got to create a new div. Every time you want to have different looking content but with the same styles, like a blue background or something to that effect, you'll have to create a new div ID for that. And then when you look at your CSS, you'll have div ID something, div ID something else, div ID something else, and it just blows up your CSS size. One, two, it's hard to remember all those IDs. It just gets confusing. Believe it or not, there are still people that do this. Some of you veteran web designers will hear this and say, "Well, I don't know why people still do this," but they do. But the thing is, if you want a consistent layout or a consistent look spread across different divs on your site, you add a class to it. And it's really simple. And it can be anything you want, and then if you just remember it, you can use it at will. And so, for example, I chose the div of a class of blue. And so what happens is I want uh, the background to be blue. I want the text to be white. And then I want some padding around the edges so that everything's not bumped up next to the edge. Now, I could probably stand to use a little more left and right padding, but just for example's sake, bear with me here. So instead of trying to do a div with and then control all this stuff for each section, which is with a div ID, a different div ID for each one, that's absurd. Just do one class, and you can add that to whatever div you're in. And so your div can be whatever you want it to be, and then with a class of blue attached to it. So it's actually a lot easier than you would think. So you have your div class of large 4 columns. And so I wanted to add the class of blue to it. So if we go over to CSS, I created a class of blue. I want the background color to be this blue that you see here. and I want the color, the text color, to be white. And then I gave it a padding of 7 pixels. And so from here, with this div class of blue, we can just add this at the end of our class. See, this already has a class on it of large 4 columns, but we can also add blue. Add a space and blue, then save it. And then if you go back and refresh, there it is. Now the text has 7 pixels of padding. It's got a blue background, and the text is white. Consistent look that fits the rest of this. And you can see that I gave everything else a class of blue as well. I added blue to the other sections. You could see large 4 columns blue, large 4 columns blue. Then I gave the H3 class blue. See, these are H3 classes here. I gave them a class of blue, so it makes their text white and their backgrounds blue. So that way you don't have to try to make this whole div blue. It's just this section. And so, you know, you won't have a big blue bounding box around there. You'll just have the blue background with white text under your image. It's that simple, and you can apply it to just about any element you could think of. And that's how classes work. I'm sure you guys have questions about classes. There's all kinds of different classes, especially like pseudo classes and things like that. So if you guys have any questions about classes, be sure to post them in the comments section below this video. I'm James George, and this is Web Design Blog.